The space station Delta 9 floated in the cold silence of deep space. It was a mix of technology and alien cultures, a place where thousands of beings lived, studied, and worked together. At the edge of the station near the education sector, a quiet transport ship arrived. It carried someone new, someone no one expected. Name was Milan. He stepped out wearing a plain coat and holding a small bag. He looked like a normal human teacher. His eyes were calm. His hair was short and gray. He spoke softly and walked slowly, like someone who did not want attention. The principal of the academy, Miss Kova, greeted him at the gate. She was tall, strict, and known for her sharp memory. She shook Milan's hand and gave him a small nod. You will be teaching diplomacy and behavior studies to Class 7, she said. They are a challenge. Good luck. Milan nodded. Thank you, I'll manage. But it wasn't easy. Class 7 was a mix of young aliens and humans. They were known for being wild and rude. The worst of them were 3 students, Rexo, Jeev, and Nara. They controlled the class like a gang. No teacher stayed more than a week. When Milan entered the classroom for the first time, the students stared. Some laughed. Rexo, the leader, crossed his arms and smirked. So, this is the new victim, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Jeev threw a paper ball at Milan's back. The others followed with giggles and jokes. Nara rolled her eyes and kicked Milan's chair as she passed. Milan didn't react. He picked up the paper ball, calmly placed it in the bin, and began the lesson. His voice stayed quiet but steady. He talked about alien customs, how different species greet each other, and the importance of respect in interstellar relations. No one listened. Rexo put his feet on the desk. Jeev drew strange signs on his tablet. Nara opened a secret channel and sent a fake message to the class, pretending it came from Milan. It said that Milan believed humans were the smartest and aliens were slow. The class exploded in laughter. Milan looked up and saw the screen, but said nothing. Instead, he continued the lesson as if nothing happened. After the bell rang, the students rushed out one by one. They mocked Milan on their way out. Jeev whispered, "This one won't last a week." Milan stayed behind, cleaning the classroom carefully. He looked at the chair Nara kicked and glanced at the hidden camera in the corner of the room. He knew everything that had happened, but he wasn't angry. Outside the classroom, Miss Kova watched the footage on her screen. She raised an eyebrow. Milan had shown no emotion, not even discomfort. She tapped her fingers on the desk, thinking later that day. Rexo and Jeev planned something new. They decided to lock Milan out of the classroom before the next lesson. They changed the door code and placed sticky foam on the floor so he would slip. The next morning, Milan arrived early as usual, but when he reached the door, it wouldn't open. He looked at the scanner and saw the foam. He paused for a second, then pulled out a tiny tool from his coat and changed the code in 5 seconds. The door slid open without a sound. He walked in as if nothing had happened. The class was shocked. Rexo whispered, "How did he get in during the lesson?" Milan asked a question about alien etiquette. No one answered. Then he smiled slightly and asked again. This time his voice was sharper, not louder, but clearer. Nara answered wrongly. Milan nodded and said, "Good try, but not correct." He explained the right answer and moved on. Something about the way he moved, the way he taught, began to feel different. It was not fearsome, not loud, but something that made the class unsure. Later that evening, as the station lights dimmed and night mode began, Milan sat in his small room. He placed his bag on the table and opened it. Inside was not just books and lesson plans. There was also a locked metal case with a symbol on it, a faded logo that only a few would recognize. Belonged to the Terran Ghost Unit. Milan looked at it for a long time, then closed the case slowly and turned off the lights. He was not just a teacher, he was something more, and the bullies had no idea. The days passed slowly, and Milan stayed calm. He came to class every morning on time. He taught the lessons with patience, even when no one listened. The students still made fun of him, but something was starting to change. Rexo noticed it first. He Watched how Milan never reacted, not even once, when Jiv tried to trip him with a chair, or when Nara spilled blue ink on his coat. Milan only smiled, cleaned the mess, and continued the class like nothing had happened. Why is he not angry? Rexo asked. One day, maybe he is just stupid, Jiv replied, or maybe he is scared. But Nara was not sure. She had seen something in Milan's eyes the day he corrected her answer. It was not fear, and it was not weakness. It felt like control, like he was choosing. To stay quiet one afternoon, Milan gave the class a strange assignment. He told each student to write about one mistake they had made and what they learned from it. The students were confused. Most refused, but Milan did not push. He only said, think about it. Sometimes we learn more from falling than from flying. That evening, Rexo and Jiv followed Milan secretly through the station. They had stolen a passcode from the security panel and used it to access the outer walkway. They thought they could scare him or maybe catch him doing something strange. Milan walked slowly through the quiet hallways, heading toward the lower sectors. Two figures in masks appeared from the shadows and tried to grab him. Rexo and Jiv watched from a corner, excited to see him panic, but Milan did not panic. He moved fast and silent. Before they could blink, one masked figure fell to the ground. The other was pinned against the wall. His weapon crushed. Milan looked at them calmly and said, "Tell your boss to stop using children." Then he vanished into the shadows. Rexo and Jiv stood frozen. They had never seen anything like it. They returned to their rooms without speaking a word. Next day, news spread around the station. Two unknown attackers were found unconscious behind the vent shaft. Security bots scanned the area but found nothing. No fingerprints, no weapon marks, just silence. Miskova watched the report and leaned back in her chair. She knew only one person who could move without being seen, and now she was sure Milan was not just a teacher in the classroom. Milan acted as usual. He asked questions, told stories about peace between alien tribes, and explained why respect was more powerful than weapons. But the class was not laughing as much now even. Rexo sat straighter in his chair after the lesson. Milan handed back the assignments. Some students had written something simple, just to avoid punishment. But Nara had written something real. She had once taken a small cube from a traveler in the lower district. She thought it was just a pretty crystal. She kept it hidden in her locker. In her writing, she said she sometimes felt strange around it, like it whispered to her. Milan read her paper carefully. He said nothing but looked at her for a moment. Longer than usual. Later that day, Milan visited the locker area when no one was around. He scanned Nara's locker quietly. The cube inside was not normal. It glowed faint blue and gave off a weak energy pulse. It was old alien tech and dangerous. Closed the locker and walked away silently. He needed more time, but now he knew the danger was closer than he thought. Back in his room, Milan opened the metal case again. Inside were tools from his past, small weapon scanners and a communication device. He took out a silver badge with a faded logo and placed it on the table. He pressed a button, and a soft voice came through the speaker. Status asked. The voice, target is active. Milan replied, not ready to strike yet. I am watching. The voice paused, then said, proceed with caution. Milan turned off the device and looked at the photo on his wall. It showed young students smiling in a classroom. It was not from this school. It was from a mission long ago that had ended in flames. I will not fail again, he whispered to himself. The bullies had started this as a joke, but they had no idea what game they were playing, and Milan was not just watching now, he was preparing. Milan sat alone in his room as the station lights blinked outside his window. He held a small photo in his hand. It was old, faded, and creased. It showed a team of soldiers wearing black armor with a strange symbol on their arms. They stood in front of a burning outpost, their faces cold and silent. Milan was in the middle, his face younger, but his eyes still the same. He was once known as Spectre 11, one of the most feared assassins in the Terran Ghost Unit. He had ended wars without firing. A shot and removed dangerous leaders in silence. His name had vanished from the records years ago. After a failed mission that changed everything now, he was here not by chance, but by choice. A secret mission had brought him to Delta 9. A group of smugglers were using students to carry illegal alien tech across sectors. The kids didn't even know what they were carrying. Milan's orders were clear. Watch. Find the source. Do not reveal your cover unless forced. Cube in Nara's locker was not just strange, it was dangerous. It came from a restricted zone and was used to control minds. If activated, it could spread like a wave, taking over young brains slowly and without pain. Milan had seen it before. On a mission to Sector 15, he had arrived too late. A full academy had fallen under control of such tech, and none had survived. He would not let that happen again. The academy things looked normal on the outside. Classes continued. The students still laughed, though less than before. Rexo had become quieter. Jiv watched Milan more closely now, and Nara had stopped joking during lessons. Milan gave his next lecture about alien signals and silent languages. He showed how a single gesture could mean war or peace, depending on the planet. He watched their faces as they listened. Some were bored, but others were starting to pay attention. After class, Nara stayed behind. She looked unsure, then said softly, "I think someone is following me." Milan nodded slowly. "Did you see who? No. Just shadows," she said. "And sometimes I feel like I'm hearing things like voices in my head, but only near my locker." Milan looked at her and said calmly, "You did the right thing by telling me stay close to public areas. Do not go out alone." He walked with her to the hall, then turned back toward the locker section. When he was sure no one was around, he opened the secret tool in his wristband and scanned again. The signal was stronger now. The cube was waking up. That night, Rexo and Jiv broke into Milan's room. They wanted to know the truth and maybe take something useful. Rexo had convinced Jiv it was just for fun, but deep inside, he felt nervous inside. Milan's room, they found books, lesson plans, and a locked metal case. Jiv touched the case and a small screen lit up. It showed an old code symbol he had never seen. Rexo tried to open it, but the screen turned red, and a voice said, "Access denied. Security alerts." Suddenly the lights flickered. The air turned cold and quiet. The door slid shut behind them. Then Milan was there, standing in the corner of the room. He had entered without a sound. His eyes were calm, but sharp like blades. "You came to steal," he said softly, "or maybe to learn." Rexo stepped back. Jiv tried to speak, but no words. Milan walked toward them slowly. He did not shout or threaten. He simply said, "You think strength is in power or in fear, but strength is in control, in knowing when not to strike." He looked at the metal case and then back at them. "Do not come here again, not for your safety, but for mine. I am trying to stay quiet." Rexo nodded quickly. Jiv looked pale. They left the room without a word. After they were gone, Milan sat down. He opened the metal case and checked his tools. His old gloves, a small energy blade, and a map of the station. All signs pointed to one thing: the cube was part of a network, a bigger plan. And the center of that plan was already moving. Milan had stayed silent long enough now. The time to act was near. Milan stood near the academy window, looking out at the stars. The station lights flickered softly across his face. In the silence, he reviewed every moment, every clue. He knew the danger was close. Too close. The cube inside Nara's locker had grown stronger. He could feel its pulse even from the hall. Each time she walked past it, her steps slowed and her eyes dimmed. He had seen this before. The beginning of control. He went to the locker room again, alone this time. He placed a blocker on the security camera and opened Nara's locker. The cube sat quietly at the back, glowing a soft blue light. Milan took out a small scanner from his coat and hovered it over the cube. Strange symbols flashed on the screen. They were from an old alien language, used by smugglers and dark tech dealers. It was not just a device. It was alive. A parasite made of machine and mind, designed to bond with the brain and spread through communication like a virus. He had to act, but the full network was not yet exposed. Someone was sending these cubes through students, but who and why that? Same night, Nara left her room to get water. She walked slowly through the hallway. Her head felt heavy. Her thoughts were not clear. A voice whispered inside her mind. It spoke a language she didn't know yet, somehow understood. Let go. Join the light. Become more. She dropped her cup and held her head. The lights above her blinked fast, then turned red. Milan appeared from the shadows and ran to her. He placed a silver device on her forehead and pressed a button. A sharp sound rang in the air, and Nara screamed, then went silent. Cube inside the locker exploded in a small burst of light before turning to ash. Nara fell into Milan's arms, unconscious, but breathing. Her heartbeat was slow but steady. Milan carried her to the academy clinic and told the med officer that she had fainted. He said nothing more. The next morning, rumors spread. Some students said Nara had been sick. Others said she saw a ghost. Rexo and Jiv said nothing. They sat quietly in class. Their eyes stayed on Milan during the lesson. Milan told a story about a planet that almost fell because of a single lie, a lie that spread faster than truth, a lie hidden in light. Some students listened carefully. Now others still looked bored, but something had changed after class. Rexo stopped Milan in the hallway. "What happened to Nara?" he asked. His voice was not mocking. It was serious. "She is safe," Milan said. "That is enough for Rexo nodded and walked away." But his mind was full of questions. Later that day, Milan followed a signal on his wrist device. It led him to the lower level of the station, near the supply hangar. There he saw Nara again. She was talking to a cloaked figure. The figure handed her another cube, smaller this time and darker. Milan stepped closer quietly. His steps made no sound. The figure turned and looked around, but saw nothing. Nara looked lost. Her hands shook as she took the cube. Her eyes were glowing faint blue again. Milan waited until the figure left, then approached Nara. She turned in fear, but he held up his hand. "They know what they are doing," he said. "They are using you. We can stop them together." She dropped the cube and fell to her knees. "I thought it was just a gift," she whispered. "I didn't know you still have a choice." Milan said, "Take it now." He destroyed the cube with a press of his hand. A small burst of smoke vanished in the air back in his room. Milan sent a secret message through his old device. The signal was short but clear. "Target confirmed, network active, requesting clearance to engage." A reply came within seconds. "Proceed with caution," said the voice. Milan closed the device and looked out the window again. The stars looked peaceful, but he knew peace was never free. The enemy had made the first move. Now it was his turn. The academy was no longer a safe place. It had become a battlefield hidden behind books and quiet halls. But Milan was ready, and this time he would not fail. The academy halls were quiet, but Milan could feel the tension in the air. Something was changing. The students walked with heavy steps and spoke in low voices. News of Nara's collapse had spread, but no one knew the full truth. Milan entered the classroom as usual, carrying his small bag and a digital tablet. He greeted the class with a calm voice and began the lesson. The topic was trust between species and how fragile peace could be. He told a story of a human and a Zarn beast who became friends through kindness, not power. He spoke gently, but each word carried weight. Jiv looked at Milan with new eyes. He remembered the night in Milan's room when the lights flickered and the cold silence came. He had never seen anyone move like Rexo sat quietly at the back, his hands folded and his eyes focused. He no longer laughed when Milan spoke. Something deep inside him had started to change after class. Milan asked Rexo and Jiv to stay. They hesitated, but agreed. "You both want answers." Milan said, "I will not give you all of them, but I will give you truth." He pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the table. A blue light rose and formed an image of the cube, the same kind found in Nara's locker. "This is not a toy," he said. "It is a parasite made to control. It bonds with young minds slowly and without pain. It uses thoughts and dreams to change how you think both." Boys stared at the image in shock. Nara did not know what she carried. Milan continued, "She trusted the wrong hands, but she is not the only one. Others may be used too." Y.S. Rexo asked, "Why this school?" "Because no one would suspect it." Milan replied, "Children are easy targets. No one checks their bags. No one questions their gifts." She frowned and said, "What do we do? Learn," Milan said, "and stay away from those who whisper in the dark later." That evening Nara woke in the clinic. Her eyes no longer glowed. Her voice was weak but clear. He asked for Milan. He came quietly and sat beside Harry. "I'm sorry," she said. "I did not know what I was doing." "You were brave to tell the truth," he said. "Many do not." "Will they come again?" she asked. "They will try," Milan said. "But next time we will be ready." The next morning the academy held a special meeting. Principal Kova stood before the students and gave a short speech about safety and responsibility. She did not mention the cubes, but told everyone to report strange items or messages. Milan stood at the side watching the crowd. He knew some of them had already seen things they could not explain. Some had touched the danger without knowing. The smugglers were smart. They used fear and silence as weapons. They moved through shadows using young hands to carry their poison. But now Milan had all eyes. He had students who had seen enough to believe. That night alarms echoed across Delta 9. An explosion shook the lower sector, and emergency lights turned red. Milan was already moving, his eyes sharp, his steps quick. He put on his old gloves and took his scanner from the metal case. He contacted his old partner, a robot named Zell, still hidden deep in the station. "I need your eyes," Milan said. "Activate now," a voice replied. "Understood." Partner on Linux's scanners lit up and revealed several masked figures entering the academy through the service tunnels. They carried more cubes and strange tools glowing with blue light. "They are here," Milan said. He sent a silent signal to Principal Kova, then entered the tunnel through the hidden door behind the storage room. Air was cold and filled with static. The smugglers moved in silence, but Milan moved faster. One by one he followed them, watching, waiting. He did not strike yet. He needed to see the leader, the one who gave the orders. But now the lesson had truly begun. Not the one from books or screens, but the real one. The lesson of choice, the lesson of courage. The students had laughed at Milan before. Now they watched him with respect, and some would follow him into the fire if needed. Because now they knew their teacher was not weak, he was their shield. The attack began without warning. Red lights flashed through the halls of Delta 9. Loud alarms echoed across every floor. Students were told to stay in their rooms. Security bots rushed through the corridors, but they were not enough. The smugglers had come in full force. They wore dark suits that hid their faces and blocked scanners. Some carried weapons. Others carried more of the glowing cubes, ready to spread their poison. Milan moved like a shadow through the emergency tunnel. His eyes scanned every corner, his hands steady, and Counsel's voice came through the small device on Milan's wrist. 2 groups moving toward the student wing. 3 more at the control center. "We must split." "Understood," Milan said. "Keep them away from the academy." Milan climbed a ladder and entered the hallway near the library. From a distance, he saw 3 smugglers placing cubes near the ventilation vents. If those cubes activated, the air would carry the parasite tech across the whole station. Milan ran forward and threw a small pulse device. It exploded in a bright flash and knocked 2 smugglers off their feet. The third raised a weapon, but Milan was faster. He kicked it away and pinned him to the wall. "Who is your leader?" Milan asked. The smuggler stayed. Silent. Milan tapped a point on his suit, and the man collapsed with a soft thud. He turned and destroyed the cubes with a silent spark of blue fire. At the same time, Principal Kova was guiding students into safe zones. Her voice stayed strong and clear, though fear filled her eyes. "Stay together, stay low, do not touch anything glowing blue." She said. Rexo, Jiv, and Nara were among the students hiding in the science room. They watched the chaos from a small window. "We have to help," Nara said. "We will only get in the way," Rexo replied, but his hands shook. He hated feeling useless. Jiv looked around, then pointed. "Look, Milan." They saw him outside, moving like wind, knocking down 3 more enemies with perfect strikes. He never missed a step. He never showed pain. "That is not a teacher," Jiv whispered. "That is something else." Another group of smugglers reached the control center and tried to shut down the security doors. But Zell had already taken over the main panel. His metal arms moved fast, blocking access and sending electric pulses through the floor. "You shall not pass," Zell said in his deep voice back at the academy. Milan reached the main hall, where 4 smugglers stood with something larger. It was a dark cube, the size of a desk, humming with strong energy. This one was not made for students. This one could infect the entire station. Milan did not wait. He threw a smoke capsule and jumped into the fight. His hands moved faster than the eye could follow. His legs struck with perfect aim. He moved like a ghost, never in one place for more than a second. 3 smugglers fell. The last tried to activate the cube, but Milan's blade cut through the wire just in time. The cube sparked and shut down behind him. Rexo and Nara appeared holding basic shields from the science lab. "We could not stay back," Nara said. "You need help. You are brave," Milan said. "But stay close and follow my lead." They nodded together. They moved through the halls, helping those who were trapped, guiding others to safety. Milan did most of the fighting, but the students learned to be strong, to protect, not to harm. Hours later, the station lights turned back to normal. The alarm stopped. The smugglers had been caught. The cubes were destroyed. The threat was over. Security teams arrived and began cleanup. Principal Kova looked at Milan and said, "You saved this station." Milan replied, "I protected my class. That is what a teacher does." That night the academy was silent, but a new feeling had grown inside the hearts of the students. They had seen something impossible. They had followed a man who once looked weak, but stood stronger than any soldier. And they had learned a lesson no book could ever teach, the lesson of courage, the lesson of choice, the lesson of standing for what is right, even in the darkest hour. The station was calm again. Days passed slowly as repairs were made and broken halls were cleaned. The students returned to class, but they were not the same. They had seen danger, they had faced fear, and they had watched their quiet teacher become something else. Milan entered the classroom, as usual, carrying his tablet and wearing the same plain coat, but the class no longer saw him as weak. He was now a protector, a warrior, and something more. Rexo sat near the front. Now he asked questions and took notes. Jiv had started helping younger students with their work. Nara had joined the safety patrol, checking halls for strange signals. Gave his lessons with the same calm voice, but his words carried more power. He told them about choices, about peace, about how even the strongest warriors must first learn to stay calm before they learn to fight one. Day after class, Nara walked up to him and asked, "Will you stay here with us now?" Milan looked at her and smiled slightly. "I was sent here for a mission," he said. "That mission is complete, but maybe another one has just begun outside the classroom." Principal Kova met him with a report in her hand. "Smugglers have been sent to the outer colony for trial," she said. "They confessed everything, even the parts we did not know good." Milan replied quietly. "You could have left the station after the attack," she said. "Why did you stay?" "Because they still need a teacher," Milan said. "And I still have something to teach," she nodded. "Then I will not stop." That night, Milan sat in his room looking at the metal case on the table. He opened it one last time. The weapons were still inside. The badge still shined in the dim light. He closed it gently and placed it in the drawer. He no longer needed it. Here the next day, the academy held a small ceremony to thank those who had helped during the attack. Principal Kova gave short speeches and handed out tokens of honor to staff and security. Then she called Milan to the front. Many of you know him. As a teacher, she said, "But he has done much more than that." The students clapped. Some cheered, others stood in respect. Milan did not speak for long. He looked at the crowd and said, "I came here to teach lessons from books, but I ended up learning something." From all of you, he looked at Rexojiv, and Nara. Courage is not born. It is chosen, and you all chose it when it mattered. The crowd went silent. His words stayed in their minds. After the ceremony, the students gathered around him. Some asked questions, others simply thanked him. Later, Milan walked alone to the outer ring of the station, where the stars could be seen more clearly. He looked at the sky and thought about his past, the missions, the mistakes, the choices. He knew he could never forget them, but he could build something better. Now a voice came from behind. "It was Rexor. Are you leaving soon?" he asked. "Maybe," Milan said. "My next step is not written yet then. Can you teach us one more thing?" Rexo asked. "Just one more." Milan smiled and nodded. "Let us begin." There under the stars they sat on the floor and listened to their teacher one more time. He spoke not of battles or weapons, but of honor, of patience, and of the quiet strength that lives inside those who choose to stand for what is right. The students never forgot that moment. Years later, many of them became leaders, peacekeepers and brave officers who protected others not with fear, but with wisdom, and in every story they told, they spoke of a quiet man with silver eyes, a man who walked into their lives as a simple teacher, but who left behind the courage of a warrior and the heart of a guide. He was not just an assassin, he was their mentor, their guardian, and to many, he was the greatest teacher they ever knew.